One peaceful day, Narumikado tries to convince people to watch the new circus show. When a 5th grade called Masaru Saiga accidentally hits him with a case, so Narumi hands him the poster of the show. As the boy leaves, the man gets a deadly seizure, and the only way to save his life is by making someone laugh. He starts doing some funny moves, and luckily, Masaru laughs and saves him. Narumi decides to thank him, but he sees 3 men wearing black suits and trying to kidnap the boy. He runs toward them and realizes how strange and powerful they are. He punches them all in the face and flees with the boy to the metro station. Next, they take the first train where they get to know each other, and Masaru tells his story of how his father, the CEO of Saiga Group, huge IT and automobile company, died, and those men have been chasing him around ever since then. Narumi asks to know how his father died, so the boy explains that it was due to a car accident where a puppet-like thing got caught in his tires. Once his grandfather told him that every Saiga family line has a room filled with puppets, and all the men develop a keen interest in one type of them, which are puppets with clockwork innards that make them move just like humans. Then the grandfather asks him to listen carefully to his word and tell him to be careful if one day his father dies or any weird things start to happen, then he must take the case which was there and run away, and Shuriken will help him. As they keep talking, one man enters the wagon and gets in a fight with Narumi. Another one outside tries to stop the whole train, and it is now when they realize the men are actually puppets. But that only leads to its derailment, and it crashed in a wall of the circus where they find Shuriken, who gets a controllable puppet named Arlequin out of the case and saves the boy from another attack. Narumi didn't recognize her, and they start fighting but accidentally hurt Masaru, so they take him to the hospital, and while they wait for him to wake up, they see a huge puppet through the window. It is Iryu Ashihana and his puppet, Pulcinella, who came to kill Masaru in order to take his father's fortune. But Shuriken controlled Arlequin very well and destroyed the other puppet. But as the girl turns around, she finds out that Iryu kept her busy while his men sneak into the room and took Masaru. She starts blaming herself, but luckily Narumi beats them all and saves the boy. But then he gets another seizure and explains the symptoms of his disease. The doctor explains it scientifically and makes it clear. Narumi gets out trying to make people laugh, but he panics from the pain and scares them instead. Then Shuriken comes over and yells at him, the thing which made all the others laugh and saved Narumi's life as a consequence. At night, the 3 decide to stay at Narumi's house. They eat dinner together, and after the boy took a bath, Narumi shows him some new fighting techniques. Later that night, Masaru wakes up for the toilet. As he washes his hand, a puppet kidnaps him. Shuriken hears the scream, so she rushes to help the boy, but her case was far from her, and she finds herself obliged to fight with her hands just like Narumi does. But the kidnappers run away with the boy. Iryu Ashihana appears right after that and explains that the slaughter team to where he belongs is hired to kill the boy since he inherited the entire Saiga fortune. On the other side, in a castle, Masaru gets to know his father's youngest brother, Senji Saiga, and he's the one who ordered his servants to kidnap him. Outside, Narumi and Shuriken, in addition to all slaughter team soldiers, attack the castle to save the boy and fight all the guards. The last fight is between the 2 girls, Shuriken and another opponent, using their puppets, but it is a losing game since the beginning because Arlequin is the strongest puppet and Shuriken proved that she was born to be a puppeteer. Back to the castle, where Masaru runs away from his uncle and hides himself inside a dark room where he finds his father's diaries. As he opened it, he read a couple of lines saying, "Masaru is bait. Puppets and puppeteers have become unnecessary. Masaru is a switch from the Kuraga clan to blow themselves up." Back to Iryu and the team, who start running to the castle while he explained how the Saiga family invented all the puppets a long time ago. And back then, Kuraga paid Saiga to make them all. But now things changed and Saiga pays the slaughter team to test the performance of their puppets. Soon after that, Shuriken and Narumi fall in a trap and the man gets another seizure, so he begs her to laugh in order to save him. And then she confesses that she is a puppet, but only her smile helped him to feel better. In the castle, Masaru managed to escape from his uncle and jumps from a high window to land right in front of Iryu, and he asks him to switch to his side and work for him. And the look in his eyes makes things clear. The boy is thirsty for life. In order to convince him more, he hands him his father's diaries, in which is written clearly that the members of the slaughter team are lab rats to make strong puppets only. And once they reach what they want, the members will start killing each other off. The hitman got convinced and took back the boy to talk to his uncle as he wishes. And right after he gets inside the room, he sees his 2 friends, Shuriken and Narumi, being tortured by Senji's servant. And the only way to save them is by accepting to be adopted, so the boy accepts to be his son. But then Iryu convinces the boy that his uncle is not as innocent as he pretends, and he will not save his friends by being his son. Masaru gets angry and attacks his uncle. After that, Iryu takes him to meet Shuriken and Narumi, and before getting out altogether, they have to fight the guards. Shuriken got injured and can't use her puppet, so the boy does the move and takes the wires to control it instead of running away and defeats the other puppeteer. Sooner after that, a big explosion happened and the fire surrounded the room. Narume decides to save Shirogane by sending her with Arlecchine. Masaru accidentally falls down to another floor, so Narume covers him until all the fires turned off. The boy opens his eyes and gets shocked by realizing that his friend sacrificed his life to save him. 2 months later, the boy goes back to school and Shirogane is allowed to stay with him at school, but in 2 different classes. Masaru tells his friend Ori the full story, and then she comes out with a question about in which circus does Shirogane want to perform next. She was playing in one already. The boy has no answer because he never thought about this suggestion, so he decides to take Shirogane to join the Nakamichi circus, where she gets a very warm welcome. On the other side, something unbelievable happened as Narume is still alive, but he has a temporary memory loss. He opens his eyes in a hospital in the US to find the doctor Guy Christophe Red and an old lady who looks like a witch out of a fairy tale named Lucille Verneuil. Soon after that, he sees a small kid in a hallway, so he runs toward him instinctively and realized after a couple of minutes that the boy has the Zonapha syndrome just like him. After that, the doctors told him all the details about how they found him in an explosion in Japan and made a prosthetic arm for him, and that the hospital is the world's leading Zonapha research and treatment facility. Christophe reveals that he was in Japan to scout Narume, but he refused to say more. As the days pass, the man starts getting used to a certain lifestyle where he sleeps well, eats well, and plays with the kid. Once, when he was walking through the hallway, he saw the doctors and the nurses getting high on drugs, so he rushes to inform Dr. Bernard, but he ignores him. Then he also sees how they interrogate the kids ruthlessly as a plan to hunt the automata, but now he couldn't control his reaction and breaks the glass to beat Christophe. At that moment, he realized he can heal his own injuries, so after taking a look on all the patients and seeing all their suffering, he understands why the medical crew gets high, and he asks a guy Christophe about what they did for him. It turns out that he used an elixir named Aquavitae, which can cure anything, and it is the only way to cure the syndrome, but they have a limited quantity of it, since it was made by an ancient alchemist. Then Guy asks Narume to assist him in his work to defeat the automata who's been spreading the syndrome, and the group commanding them is called the Midnight Circus. In addition, he asks him to be a Shirogane. At this moment, he remembers his old friend. Soon after that, the alert rings loud, and Lucille comes to inform them about Pullman and Anselmus, who came for their blood and human lives. The old lady keeps saying that if he becomes a Shirogane and defeats the automata, the hospital will be able to save a far greater number of children. Then she gives him a mask which an old alchemist once wore a long time ago. Narume with no hesitation rushes and starts beating all the soldiers of the Midnight Circus and defeats them all, but when he's done, the kids seem to be scared after watching the battle, so he agrees to wear the mask. Next, he promises to keep fighting the automata till his last breath, which means he agrees to be a Shirogane. Back to Masaru, who spends his free time in building the new circus with the other team members. Shirogane Saiga meets a new knife thrower named Velma, and they quickly get to know each other and become friends. Later at night, it turns out that Velma only wants the boy dead, and as she is a knife thrower, she stabs Shirogane's body everywhere. But right then, she reveals her biggest secrets as she has a special life within her, and she can cure her wounds by herself, so Velma passes out. When she wakes up later at night, Shirogane convinces her to join their circus as a knife thrower. And the next day, over the Pacific Ocean headed towards Shanghai, Narume, Guy, and the old lady go to catch the automata. In the plane, the automata soldiers appears and they plan to destroy it, as the death of those 3 guys means their victory. The soldiers took control of the plane and the Dr. Guy as a hostage. Every hit made by Narume will lead to break one of Guy's fingers. The doctor reveals he doesn't feel pain and asks Narume to kill all the soldiers. Lucille also destroyed them with no mercy, and Guy used his puppet to kill the last one. After defeating the ones in the plane, the lady takes the pilot seat and flies with it. But unexpectedly, more automata soldiers besiege them in the sky and destroys the engine. Guy decides to take his puppet Olympia and go out even after having only 3 healthy fingers left. At the same time in Japan, it is the Nakamichi circus opening day, and suddenly the plane crashes down and hits the circus wall. When Shirogane Saiga and Masaru goes out to see what happened, they don't believe their eyes after seeing Narume's shadow. After that, they found Guy Christophe injured, so the Shirogane runs and saves him since he was her teacher, and he calls her Eleanor. The girl nurses him and decides to join the circus to perform with them. At night, Masaru wakes up and asks himself why his father left his entire fortune for him only, so he decides to leave in the morning and face his past. In parallel, Narume and Lucille went to the master Liang's dojo, the man who taught Narume everything he knows about martial arts, in search for clues, but they didn't find him, since he left looking for the spring of immortality. The old lady told them by finding the master Liang, they will find the Midnight Circus. The daughter of the master decides to go with them. As they walk through the jungle, they find the man they've been looking for. He seems to be affected with the syndrome. Old man starts telling them a story that happened 200 years ago, of 2 brothers in the Bay family of puppeteers. They wanted to learn alchemy in order to breathe life into puppets. The elder brother was Yin, and the younger one was Jin. The pair set out in a journey in order to realize their dream. They took 8 years to get to the city of Alchemy, Prague, the city of 100 spears, where they meet the young pretty lady named Francine. After that, the two boys fall in love with her, especially Yin, who knew her story and how she spent time and did effort to help the poor people. So he decided to leave the alchemy and begged her to marry him and promised her to keep helping people. Everything seemed to be going well, but Jin lost the love of his life, Francine. So he decided to take revenge from his brother. It is mentioned in the old stories at the same night an alchemist disappeared from the street of Prague with a woman. Narumi interrupts and starts telling the second part of the story. The alchemist who vanished was Jin, who kidnapped his lover, so his elder brother decided to find him in wrath and to bring back his wife. It took him 9 years to find Jin, and he decided to take his life, but the younger brother reveals that he was in the church the day of the marriage proposal and he saw how Yin stole Francine from him. Upon hearing these words, Yin realized how he betrayed his little brother, but it was too late since Jin was transformed to a totally different person. Later, Yin about Francine's disease and that his brother had been working in the mansion to find a cure for her, so he decided to work with him. After spending days and nights of hard work, fatigue and hunger, he finally succeeded in making the soft stone that produces the cure all alchemists had dreamed of, the aqua vitae. When he wants to save his wife, the fire destroyed the house where she lived and she died. At the end, Jin also made the cure, but they never crossed paths again since that incident. After 23 years, Jin created a puppet that looked exactly like Francine and injected the cure in her body in order to breathe life in her. He succeeded, but he couldn't make her laugh, so he created the Zonapha syndrome in order to force all the villagers to make her laugh, but they couldn't. The man left with his puppets after torturing people, and Lucille was one of those. 6 years later, a masked man calling himself Shirogane comes to that village and brings the cure, but he allowed only the ones who wanted revenge to drink from it, including Lucille. The masked man was Yin, and he dissolved in the well. After drinking from the water, you'll be able to control puppets. You get knowledge about the automata army, which Jin created, and before all this, you will feel a deep malice toward Jin and his creature. Everything was clear except Jin's death, so a puppet appears out of nowhere and explains that Jin attempted to kill the fake Francine he made and left the village without knowing that he failed in killing her. On her turn, she made her own army called Midnight Circus, who's looking for a way to make her laugh. And to do so, they must drink from the aqua vitae, a river which was right there, but the Master Liang decided to explode it. The Shiroganes discovered the circus where the automata is, so they all went to fight with them, as it's supposed to be the last battle between the two sides since the river of aqua vitae doesn't exist anymore. Wasoro decides to get inside first, but she comes back in pieces, and Dotori comes out and introduces himself as one of the Likat Poignet, which Francine created, and he agrees on the battle. Lucille chooses wisely the participant of the fight. She started by herself, then Fatima, Rockenfield, Dembevati, Thor, last but not least, Narumi. Suddenly Zed, one of the Shiroganes, runs inside the circus. At first, he kills 2 opponents, but then he gets killed by Olsen, and Mary go around automata. Narumi goes next and defeats Olsen, while the 2 girls, Minchi and Fatima, destroy the other 2 acrobats. Dotori announces their win, and they pass to the next level of the battle. The floor opens and they fall in another stage. They find 2 doors, one of them leads to Francine. After that, Minxia doesn't feel well as her wounds are deep, so they decide to leave her behind with Fatima while they split in 2 groups and each one enters a door. Narumi, Thor and Rockenfield in the first group, in addition to Lena, who can see very well in the darkness, so she guides them. They keep walking until they arrive to a bright room where Dotori informs them that they are about to start fighting and only 2 who survive a fight among the 4 of them will be able to proceed. They find themselves in the obligation of killing each other to survive. Lena starts the first attack, but they easily beat her. Then the 2 others declare their intention of killing Narumi, but he refuses to fight them back. As the knights from the wall got launched, Narumi manages to protect the 2 others and he chooses to send them to continue while he waits to find a solution and escapes with Lena. As the room seems to collapse, they jump to the wall and break it to enter another room where they find the second team who joins the faceless leader and Dembevati. At the same time, Minxia wakes up and feels much better after being nursed by Lucille and Fatima. The girl gets up excited, but the old lady explains the necessity of finding a third way that leads to Francine. Back to Narumi and the team. The leader opened another door through the wall. Dembevati and Lena escapes while Narumi protects them, and when the sharp wheel gets too close, the leader sacrifices his life by getting himself stuck between the sprockets in order to stop the wheel. After an emotional moment, he gives him his glasses. After getting out of that room bleeding, Narumi meets Thor alone, so he helped him to walk by and reveals his intention to destroy the doll Francine because he saw how she treated people badly and didn't care much about their lives. After walking enough, they gather with other survivors and they get ready to face other automaton, the Likat Poignet, who are considered as the strongest automatons. And right after defeating them, they will have the chance to face Francine. Lena with her super hands and 3 others, Dembevati, Rockenfield and Thor with their puppets, but Narumi is asked to stay aside because of his wound. As the fight starts, the Shirogane promise to protect each other and fight as a team. At the same time, the girls Minchia, Fatima and Lucille are on their way for help. While the fight is on fire, the reinforcement arrive, and the biggest surprise is Lucille, controlling the doll which looks exactly like Francine, and it asks the automaton to bow. After that, the old lady convinces Dottori to stop believing in the existence of Francine and played with his ideas. But he's stupid enough to think in such a thing without putting in mind that the automaton's reasons of existence is to work for that leader. As he stands up, he dies, but he killed Lucille after that. Narumi on the other side takes the necessary treatments. Tor and Tembavari decide to go to the Lady Francine, but they ended up dead after killing all the low-class automatons, in addition to one of the 4 noble soldiers, Columbine. The Dr. Rookenfield also dies while placing the last protestic on Narumi, and the only soldier left is Fatima. The girl decides to fight the 2 automatons left on her own, but before they kill her, Narumi shows up to save her and fights with incredible power like if he wasn't wounded few minutes ago. Fatima dies on her turn, right after defeating the 2 last automatons. Then Narumi finds himself face to face with the doll Francine, but before he does a move, she explains how she was made by the true Francine and she replaced her for more than a century. Narumi in shock feels disappointed since all the effort were for nothing, so he destroys her angrily. Back to Leonore and her master guy, who are discussing the reasons behind Masaru's disappearance. Suddenly, Narumi comes out and attacks her since she looks exactly like Francine. She tried to make him remember the old days, but as he got a temporary memory loss, he attacks her with no mercy. She asks why, and he answers that an old man who survived Clog village in Quiberon, the old man spent years searching for the true Francine, and he chose Eleanor as the one. The girl doesn't fight back because she's in love with him and gives up. But right before he kills her, he remembers how they were happy in the past, so he just leaves her alone. In the next morning, Masaru goes to his family mansion where the fire happened and he meets the gardener. Right after saying his name, the man takes him to his house and hands him a box which his father left for him. It has a lot of keys and a letter asking him to go to a certain room in the mansion in order to know more about his past. The boy rushes to the room. As he gets in, the lights turn on and a voice recording of his father starts. His dad said that he will help him to understand his past, and he shocks him by saying that he's not Masaru Saiga, but he is the small version of his father Sadayoshi. Then he keeps explaining the scientific process, since all the information in the brain can be converted to electrical impulses and downloaded to another brain, and that is what happened. All the information in Sadayoshi's brain were downloaded to his son. The kid yells to know why he doesn't have the memories of his father, and the voice recording tells him that in order to stimulate the complete restoration of his memory, all he has to do is trying to remember, since everything is in a biochip which is implemented in his brain. On his way out, a puppeteer appears and attacks him, so he finds himself obliged to use the puppets that his father left for him. A sound starts showing him how to fight and defeats the puppet and its owner. Then he wonders where the sound is coming from. A black shadow called Griffin appears and explains that he will be always on his side in case if he failed recovering his memory. Then he shows him how to use a puppet to fly out of the mansion. Later it turns out that the grandfather is actually alive and he knows about the process, so he told the villagers to bring the boy to him in order to ask him something important. The boy finally meets his grandfather, but not like expected. The more he acts like Masaru, the more the grandfather gets angrier because he believes that Sadayoshi controls his brain. Then he asks him if he found the soft stone. The boy didn't download his father's memory yet, so he doesn't understand, and his grandfather gets angrier and promises to kill him. But before doing that, he insists to make him see the harm he caused to people and forces him to drink his blood, in which his memory are dissolved. So he sees his grandpa's memories, how he spent his childhood learning from the alchemist Yin, and how he grew up to be the best doctor in the town and met the girl of his dreams, Lucille's sister, who had the aqua vitae, and decided to drink that liquid and be an immortal. Everything was going great in his life, so when did the true problem start, and why the father hates his son? That is what you guys are going to discover in our next video. Stay tuned!